There is a narrative society repeats without thinking. If you are surrounded, you are successful. If you are alone, you are flawed. But behavioral science does not support that simplification. Social isolation is not always a symptom of social incompetence. Sometimes it is a byproduct of cognitive divergence. Sometimes it is the result of heightened perception. Sometimes it is strategic withdrawal. If you have few or no friends, the explanation may not be that you failed socially. The explanation may be that your psychological wiring filters aggressively. This is not romantic, it is not glamorous, it is not special, it is costly, but it is real. There are specific traits that repeatedly appear in individuals who maintain extremely small social circles. These traits are not common, and they are not socially convenient. We will examine them without sentiment. Most people experience conversations at surface level. They process words. You process patterns. When someone speaks, you are not only listening to content, you are tracking inconsistencies, emotional leakage, timing of pauses, subtle defensive tone shifts, micro-expressions, power positioning. You notice when confidence is overcompensating. You detect when kindness is strategic. You sense when admiration contains envy. This is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition. Humans are predictable in clusters. The more you observe them, the clearer their cycles become. And once you begin seeing patterns, something changes. Naivety disappears. Trust becomes conditional. Spontaneous bonding decreases. Because spontaneous bonding requires temporary blindness. You struggle with that blindness. You do not just vibe. You evaluate, and constant evaluation reduces connection speed. People bond through shared illusion. You bond through verified consistency. Verification takes time. Most social connections dissolve before that threshold is reached. The result? Fewer relationships. Not because you are incapable of connection, but because your filtration system is aggressive. And aggressive filtration reduces volume. The average human brain is wired to crave social approval. Approval releases dopamine. Belonging releases oxytocin. Validation stabilizes identity. But not everyone experiences the same intensity of social reward dependency. If you have very few friends, there's a strong chance your dependency on external validation is low. You do not feel urgent discomfort when excluded. You do not panic when messages go unanswered. You do not chase inclusion for emotional survival. This reduces your participation in social maintenance behaviors. Frequent texting, performative enthusiasm, strategic complimenting, emotional mirroring. Most friendships are maintained through small, consistent reinforcement rituals. You skip many of those rituals, not intentionally, instinctively. You do not feel the same chemical urgency to maintain constant engagement. Over time, this creates distance, because relationships require active reinforcement. And when reinforcement frequency drops, relational bonds weaken. Your nervous system does not demand constant social stimulation, so your effort decreases, and effort is what sustains networks. Emotional transparency accelerates bonding. Revealing vulnerability creates rapid intimacy. But you do not reveal easily. You feel emotions internally, but you regulate them before displaying them. You analyze before reacting. You think before venting. You observe your own responses before sharing them. This creates two outcomes. First, you are difficult to read. Second, you are difficult to influence. In social dynamics, predictability increases comfort. When others cannot predict your emotional responses, subtle tension develops. They do not know what offends you. They do not know what excites you. They do not know how much they matter to you. Ambiguity produces caution. Caution reduces closeness. Furthermore, controlled expression reduces emotional bonding speed. Most friendships escalate through shared impulsive emotional moments. You reduce impulsivity. You delay reaction. You maintain composure. Composure slows bonding. Slow bonding limits quantity. Again, fewer relationships, not because of incompetence, because of containment. A large percentage of human bonding occurs through low-depth interaction. Shared humor, shared complaints, shared entertainment, repetitive surface engagement builds familiarity. Familiarity builds comfort. Comfort builds attachment. But if you experience cognitive fatigue during repetitive surface interaction, your participation declines. You prefer strategic discussions, psychological analysis, future planning, systems thinking, ethical dilemmas, behavioral dissection. Most environments are not structured for sustained depth. When depth is introduced too quickly, others withdraw. They experience cognitive overload or emotional exposure or boredom. Depth filters aggressively. It is not efficient for large networks. It is effective for rare alignment. Therefore, your circle contracts. Because your threshold for engagement is high, and high thresholds eliminate volume. Every group organizes itself hierarchically. Even informal friend circles. There are leaders, status seekers, mediators, entertainers, observers. Most people participate unconsciously. But if you detect hierarchy mechanics quickly, your engagement shifts. You see dominance displays disguised as humor. You see submission disguised as politeness. You see alliances forming under casual conversation. You see reputation management in real time. This awareness creates psychological distance, because once you see hierarchy mechanics clearly, immersion becomes difficult. You hesitate to invest emotionally in environments driven by status negotiation. You reduce participation in subtle competition. This reduces relational bonding, because competition and alliance formation drive group cohesion. When you opt out of the hierarchy game, you lose integration points, and integration points are what create friendship networks. To escape that discomfort, people seek. To escape that discomfort, people seek noise, conversation, notifications, constant interaction. But if you have few or no friends and it does not destabilize you, it suggests something specific. Your tolerance for internal exposure is high. You can sit with your own thoughts without immediate avoidance. You can endure stretches of silence without feeling erased. You do not equate social absence with personal invalidation. This trait has consequences. When loneliness does not terrify you, you do not negotiate your standards to escape it. You do not tolerate disrespect for access. You do not maintain shallow bonds for reassurance. You do not overextend to remain included. The average person lowers criteria under isolation pressure. You often do not. And because most social networks rely on mutual compromise and tolerance of imperfection, your unwillingness to compromise reduces inclusion. There is another dimension. When you are alone frequently, you develop internal self-referencing systems. Your sense of direction, judgment, and identity becomes less dependent on group feedback. This increases autonomy. but it also reduces relational synchronization. Friendship requires rhythm alignment. If your rhythm is self-contained, synchronization becomes rare. Again, fewer connections. Not all small circles are the result of superiority. Some are the result of recalibration after damage. If you experienced betrayal, humiliation, exclusion, or manipulation earlier in life, your nervous system adapted. Adaptation often manifests as heightened scanning and preemptive distancing. You detect risk faster, you exit faster, you trust slower. This is not weakness, it is threat calibration. However, long-term threat calibration alters relational patterns. When vigilance becomes default, neutrality is interpreted cautiously. Ambiguity is interpreted defensively. You do not wait for proof of harm. You withdraw at the probability of it. Probability-based withdrawal protects you from repetition. It also prevents natural development of trust. Trust requires risk exposure. If your tolerance for relational risk is low, your exposure is low. If exposure is low, bonding frequency decreases. The result is predictable. Minimal circle. When we combine these traits, a structural pattern appears. You observe intensely, detect inconsistency rapidly, depend minimally on validation, contain emotion strategically, avoid superficial bonding, detect hierarchy mechanics, tolerate solitude, withdraw early at risk signals. Each trait individually reduces relational speed. Together, they create aggressive filtration. Most people operate with loose filters. You operate with tight filters. Loose filters create large networks in occasional betrayal. Tight filters create small networks in reduced chaos. But tight filters also increase isolation probability. The system is efficient, it is also costly. There is a line between discernment and detachment. Discernment says, I choose carefully. Detachment says, no one qualifies. When filtration becomes extreme, something shifts. You stop evaluating individuals. You begin evaluating humanity. You may start to generalize. Most people are predictable. Most people are shallow. Most people are insecure. Pattern recognition, when overextended, becomes cynicism. Cynicism reduces curiosity. Reduced curiosity reduces opportunity for connection. Eventually, you may find that your circle is not small because no one qualifies. It is small because you have pre-rejected categories of people. This is not conscious arrogance, it is pattern fatigue. When you have seen the same behaviors repeatedly, novelty decreases. You assume repetition before confirmation, and assumption accelerates withdrawal. Long-term reduced social engagement alters neural pathways. Human brains evolved for relational exchange. Even individuals with low social reward dependency still benefit neurologically from shared laughter, mutual eye contact, physical proximity, verbal affirmation. Without these inputs, certain emotional circuits receive less stimulation. The immediate effect may feel like clarity and independence. The long-term effect can include emotional flattening, not depression, flattening, reduced excitement response, reduced attachment intensity, reduced emotional volatility. This may feel like strength. It may also be desensitization. When desensitization deepens, re-entry into social intimacy becomes difficult because high-intensity connection feels intrusive. Your system adapts to low stimulation equilibrium, and anything above that threshold feels destabilizing. Your traits make you resistant. You do not fall easily for flattery. You do not bond instantly. You do not trust rapidly. This makes you difficult to manipulate, but it also makes you difficult to access. Healthy individuals may misinterpret your restraint as disinterest. They may attempt connection once, twice, then retreat. Not because they were insincere, but because reciprocity signals were unclear. You were evaluating, they were engaging. Time mismatch reduces opportunity. Over time, only highly persistent or highly aligned individuals remain. This dramatically shrinks your exposure pool. From the outside, your behavioral profile can be misread. Reserved becomes arrogant. Observant becomes judgmental. Independent becomes emotionally unavailable. Selective becomes antisocial. When multiple people interpret you through similar distortions, reputational narratives form. And reputation influences opportunity. Fewer invitations, fewer spontaneous interactions, reduced exposure frequency. Less exposure reduces probability of organic alignment. This is not always your fault, but it is structurally predictable. Every psychological configuration has a trade-off. High empathy often trades for emotional overwhelm. High openness often trades for instability. High agreeableness often trades for exploitation risk. Your configuration trades volume for precision. You reduce chaos. You reduce betrayal frequency. You reduce manipulation probability. But you also reduce randomness, and randomness is where unexpected connection emerges. Precision limits chaos. It also limits surprise. Over decades, this trade-off compounds. You become extremely efficient socially, but socially sparse. So, if you have few or no friends, what is the underlying cause? Is it incompetence? Possibly, but unlikely if you resonate with these traits. Is it superiority? Sometimes, but superiority often masks defense. More often, it is filtration combined with autonomy. You are not socially incapable. You are socially restrictive. Restriction preserves energy. It also reduces exposure. Reduced exposure reduces probability. Probability governs connection. Lower probability yields lower quantity. The math is simple. The emotional consequences are not. If your circle is small, examine the architecture behind it. Do you withdraw before clarity, assume repetition before confirmation, contain emotion beyond necessity, avoid vulnerability entirely, dismiss entire groups based on pattern fatigue, or are you simply unwilling to tolerate inconsistency and superficiality? The difference matters, because one path leads to strategic solitude, the other leads to progressive detachment. Strategic solitude is controlled. Progressive detachment becomes automatic. If you are aware, you retain control. If you are unaware, the pattern deepens quietly. Having few or no friends is not automatically a weakness. It is often the byproduct of high perception, low validation dependency, emotional containment, hierarchy awareness, solitude tolerance, defensive filtration. These traits are rare. They are also heavy. Because while they protect you from chaos, they also reduce human density around you. The final decision is not whether you should become more social. The decision is whether your filtration is intentional. If it is intentional, your solitude is strategic. If it is automatic, your solitude is conditioning. And conditioning, left unexamined, becomes identity. Examine it. Not emotionally, structurally, because small circles are not accidents. They are engineered, consciously or unconsciously. The only question is, did you design yours? Or did your defenses design it for you?